My wife won the lottery and schemed with her parents to protect the money. They told me, "The prize belongs to Valeria. You have no right to it," and kicked me out, unaware that what happened in court would leave them speechless. It happened the night my wife became a millionaire. Champagne bottles popped, her parents cheered, and I stood in the corner holding the winning ticket we had always dreamed about. Then her father leaned forward with a smirk and said, "This changes everything, Roberto. The money stays in the family." Let me start from the beginning. My name is Roberto Salazar. I'm 45 years old, and until 11 months ago, I thought I had everything figured out. I worked as a construction project manager in Guadalajara, Jalisco, earning a stable salary of 1,200,000 pesos a year. Nothing fancy, but enough to keep my wife, Valeria, and me comfortable in our modest 3-bedroom house in the Colonia Americana. Valeria and I had been married for 8 years. She was beautiful, ambitious, and came from money. The kind of Guadalajara money that builds private subdivisions and golf clubs. Her family, the Villarreals, never thought I was good enough for their precious daughter. They made that very clear when they insisted I sign a prenuptial agreement before our wedding in December 2017. It's just to protect the family assets. Valeria's father, Don Carlos Villarreal, explained to me in his lawyer's office in Chapultepec. Nothing personal, Roberto, just business. I signed it without much thought. Love makes you do stupid things, and I was head over heels in love with Valeria. The prenup seemed straightforward. What was theirs remained theirs. What was mine remained mine, and anything we acquired together during the marriage would be considered community property. Simple enough. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and shocking twists, like this video and subscribe to the channel. Now, here there are new and unpublished stories every day, each one more intense than the last. For 8 years, our marriage was solid. We weren't rich, but we were happy. Valeria worked part-time at an art gallery downtown, more for passion than necessity, earning around 360,000 pesos a year. We talked about having children, maybe buying a bigger house someday, normal marriage things. Then, on a Tuesday morning in October 2024, everything changed. Valeria had been playing the same lottery numbers for years, a combination of family birthdays and anniversaries. Someday, she always joked, "These numbers are going to make us millionaires." That Tuesday they did. 240 million pesos. After federal taxes, Mexico taxes lottery winnings with a 1% ISR on the prize. Approximately 237,600,000 was left. I remember looking at the winning ticket in our kitchen that night, barely believing it was real. Valeria was screaming, jumping, calling her parents on the phone. "We're rich, Roberto," she shouted, throwing her arms around my neck. "We're really rich." For about 10 minutes, I thought our dreams had come true. That same night, Valeria's entire family showed up at our house. Her parents, her brother Diego, even her snobby Aunt Margarita, who normally pretended I didn't exist. They were celebrating, opening champagne, making plans, but something felt off. The way they looked at me had changed. It was subtle at first. Sideways glances, conversations that stopped when I entered the room. Valeria also seemed different, distant, cold. Over the next few days, it got worse. Valeria started having long, private calls with her family. She would leave the room when I got close, speaking in hushed tones. When I asked her about our plans for the money, she became evasive. "We need to be smart about this, Roberto," she would say. "My father knows people, financial advisors. We need to protect our fortune." 3 weeks after winning, on November 2nd, Valeria sat me down in our living room. Her parents were there too, which should have been my first red flag. "Roberto," Valeria began, her voice strangely formal. "We need to talk about our situation." Don Carlos Villarreal cleared his throat. "Son, this lottery prize changes things. Valeria's fortune needs proper protection." "Our fortune," I corrected. "We're married. What's hers is mine. What's mine is hers." The room fell silent. Valeria's mother, Dona Patricia, exchanged a look with her husband. Diego smirked from his spot by the window. "Actually, Roberto," Don Carlos continued, "that's not exactly how this works. You see, lottery winnings are considered separate property in many cases, especially when—" "What?" I asked. Valeria finally spoke. "Roberto, I think we should separate for a while. This money is mine. I want it. I picked the numbers. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. What are you saying, Valeria? I'm saying I want a divorce, she replied without looking me in the eyes. And I want you to leave today. Don Carlos leaned forward. The prenup you signed protects both parties, Roberto. Valeria's lottery prize is her separate property. You have no right to any of it. I sat there, stunned. 8 years of marriage, and they were throwing me out like trash the moment real money came into the picture. I see, I said quietly. So, was this all planned? Nothing was planned. Valeria snapped. But now that we have this opportunity, I'm not going to let anyone take advantage of me. Take advantage. That's what she called our marriage. Fine, I said, standing up. I'll pack my things. Valeria looked relieved. Her family seemed pleased with how easily I was giving in. They had no idea what they had just done. I moved into a City Express in Vallarta that night, paying 900 pesos a night. But instead of wallowing in self-pity, I did something they probably didn't expect. I called a lawyer, not just any lawyer. I called Jamie Hernandez, one of the best divorce lawyers in Guadalajara. I had heard about him from colleagues who had gone through complicated separations. His consultation cost 12,000 pesos, but it was money well spent. Mr. Salazar, Hernandez said during our meeting the next morning in his office in Providencia. Tell me about this prenuptial agreement. I handed him the copy I had kept in my file cabinet at home. Hernandez read it carefully, his expression growing more interested with each page. This is fascinating, he said finally. Your in-law's lawyer was quite meticulous, almost too meticulous. What do you mean? Hernandez pointed to a specific clause on page 3. Right here, section 4.2, states that any asset, prize, or winning acquired during the marriage shall be considered community property, subject to equitable distribution in the event of divorce. But they said lottery prizes are separate property. In Mexico, according to the Federal Civil Code, lottery tickets purchased with marital resources during the marriage are community property. And even if Valeria had used her own money, this prenup specifically overrides that protection. Hernandez smiled. Mr. Salazar, your in-laws just handed you the keys to the kingdom. I felt a cold satisfaction settling in my chest. So, I'm entitled to half. According to this document they made you sign, potentially yes. But we'll need to be strategic. They're going to fight this with everything, and they have resources. My fee is 360,000 pesos. I used my credit card and took out a loan against my afford to pay for it. The best investment I ever made in my life. Over the next 2 weeks, Valeria and her family made their intentions clear. They hired the most expensive divorce lawyer in Guadalajara, a shark named Bruno Mendizabal, who specialized in protecting the assets of wealthy clients. His hourly rate was 19,000 pesos. Mendizabal sent me threatening letters, demanding that I renounce any claim to the lottery winnings. He argued that since Valeria chose the numbers and bought the ticket, it was her separate property regardless of the prenup. They completely underestimated me. They saw a working-class guy who would roll over and accept whatever crumbs they threw at him. They were wrong. Hernandez and I worked methodically through November and December. We documented everything. When the ticket was bought, which account the money came from. Even the fact that Valeria had been using our joint Scotiabank account to buy lottery tickets for years. But the real breakthrough came when Hernandez found something beautiful in Mexican civil law. Roberto, he said during one of our strategy sessions in late December, Article 183 of the Federal Civil Code is very clear about lottery winnings acquired during the marriage. Unless there is a specific agreement stating otherwise, they are community property. But the prenup didn't exclude them. Hernandez smiled. There's the beautiful irony. The prenup your in-laws forced you to sign actually strengthens your claim. They specifically included language about any prize or winning being community property. They were so worried about protecting their existing wealth that they accidentally gave you rights to future fortunes. Meanwhile, Valeria was living it up. She bought a new BMW X5 for 1,900,000 pesos in November, designer clothes, and put a down payment on a lakefront apartment in Zapopan for 18 million pesos. Her social media was filled with photos of expensive restaurants like Alcalde and luxury shopping trips to Andars. She was spending our money like there was no tomorrow, and social media was documenting it all. The divorce proceedings began in earnest in January 2025. Mendizabal, Valeria's lawyer, came out swinging. He filed motions to dismiss my claims, arguing that I was a gold digger trying to exploit a loophole. During our first appearance in family court on January 15th, Mendizabal was smug. He paraded around in his 50,000 peso Armani suit, making snide remarks about opportunistic spouses. Who would want to listen? Your Honor, Mendizabal argued. Mr. Salazar is attempting to claim half of winnings that his estranged wife obtained through her own luck and intuition. The lottery ticket was purchased with Mrs. Salazar's personal funds, using numbers she selected based on significant family dates. This is clearly separate property. The judge, Patricia Ochoa, listened patiently. She was known for being thorough and fair, with 18 years on the family court bench. Hernandez stood up for our response. Your Honor, Mexican law is clear on this matter. But more importantly, the prenuptial agreement that Mr. Mendizabal's clients insisted on signing specifically states that any prize or winning acquired during the marriage is community property. Mendizabal scoffed. That clause was meant to cover things like small casino winnings or raffle prizes, not a 240 million peso lottery prize. The document says any prize or winning, Your Honor, Hernandez replied calmly. It does not specify an amount limit. Judge Ochoa requested copies of all documents. The hearing was adjourned for 2 weeks to give her time to review everything. Valeria was furious. I heard from mutual friends that she had been screaming at her parents, blaming them for the language in the prenup. The Villarreal family was beginning to panic. They tried to reach an out-of-court settlement in early February. Don Carlos Villarreal called me directly on my cell phone, something he had never done in 8 years of marriage. Roberto, let's be reasonable here, he said. We'll offer you 24 million pesos to walk away clean. That's more money than you've ever seen in your life. I'll think about it, I replied, although I had already made my decision. 2 days later, Valeria herself showed up at my City Express room. She looked different, tired, stressed. The constant partying was taking its toll. Roberto, please, she begged. Can we work this out? I was scared. Okay. The money overwhelmed me. My family got in my head. Scared of what? Valeria? Of sharing our good fortune? I'll give you 64 million, she said, desperate. 64 million pesos, Roberto. We can both start over. I looked at my wife of 8 years, this woman I once loved completely, and felt nothing but pity. It was never about the money, Valeria. It was about respect. She left in tears. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The discovery phase in February and March revealed just how badly they had miscalculated. Hernandez requested all of Valeria's financial records, showing she had been using our joint account to buy lottery tickets for years. We had documentation going back to 2019, proving it was a pattern of marital spending. More damaging was what Mendizabal had advised Valeria to do with the money. Instead of keeping it separate, she had been spending it freely, commingling it with other marital funds. In legal terms, she had confused the asset, which further strengthened our claim. But the real nail in the coffin came when Hernandez discovered that Mendizabal had made a critical error. In his rush to file preliminary motions in November, he had actually acknowledged in court documents that the lottery ticket was purchased during the marriage with community funds. He just destroyed his own case, Hernandez told me, barely containing his glee. Mendizabal is so used to bullying people into settlements that he got sloppy. The final hearing was scheduled for April 18, 2025. As the date approached, the Villarreal family's desperation became obvious. They hired a private investigator to dig up dirt on me. They found nothing. I had lived a clean life. They tried to claim I had been emotionally abusive, hoping to reduce my settlement. Valeria gave a statement claiming I had been controlling and manipulative. The problem was, they had no evidence. There were no police reports, no medical records, no witnesses. It was pure fabrication. Hernandez demolished their claims with phone records showing Valeria had been the one making all major financial decisions during our marriage. Bank statements proved I had never controlled her access to money. Her own social media posts showed her living freely and happily during our marriage. 3 days before the hearing, Mendizabal made one last settlement offer, 90 million pesos. It's a good offer, Roberto, Hernandez advised me. Taking this to trial is always a risk, even with our strong case. I shook my head. This isn't about maximizing the money, Jamie. This is about justice. The night before the trial, I couldn't sleep in my hotel room. I kept thinking about how this all started. with a prenup designed to keep me away from their precious family money. The irony was beautiful. Their own greed and paranoia had become the weapon that would defeat them. Valeria's family had spent their whole lives looking down on people like me, working-class people who earned their money through sweat and honest labor. They thought money made them better, smarter, more deserving. The next day, they would learn otherwise. April 18th arrived gray and damp, typical spring weather in Guadalajara. I wore my best suit, a navy blue one I had bought for our wedding 8 years ago. The irony was not lost on me. The family court was packed. Word had gotten out about the case, and local news crews from Televisa Guadalajara and Canal 44 were stationed outside. Construction worker fights for lottery millions had become a human interest story. Valeria was sitting with her family on one side of the room, looking pale and nervous. Mendizabal was whispering urgently in her ear, probably preparing her for what was coming. Judge Ochoa took her seat at exactly 9 a.m. We are here for the matter of Salazar versus Salazar. Case number 2025, FM 002847J. Mr. Mendizabal, you may present your opening argument. Mendizabal stood up confidently, but I noticed his hands were trembling slightly. Your Honor, this case is about a vengeful husband trying to steal money he had no part in earning. Mrs. Salazar selected those lottery numbers, bought that ticket, and won that prize through her own actions. Hernandez remained seated, taking notes on his yellow legal pad. He looked completely relaxed. Mendizabal went on for 20 minutes, arguing that the lottery winnings were separate property, that the prenup didn't apply to unforeseen windfalls, and that I was essentially a gold digger. When he finished, Judge Ochoa turned to Hernandez. Mr. Hernandez, your opening statement. Hernandez stood up slowly. Your Honor, this case is remarkably simple. We have a prenuptial agreement signed by both parties in December 2017 that explicitly states that any prize or winning acquired during the marriage is community property. We have Mexican civil law that supports this position, and we have documentation proving the lottery ticket was purchased with community funds during the marriage. He paused, looking directly at Mendizabal. The defendants are asking this court to ignore their own contract because they don't like the outcome. The evidence phase was devastating for Valeria's side. Hernandez presented bank records showing years of lottery ticket purchases from our joint Scotiabank account. He showed how Valeria had commingled the lottery winnings with other marital assets. He even had the receipt from the OXXO store on Avenida Americas where she had bought the winning ticket on October 8, 2024, paid for with our joint debit card. At 3:47 p.m., Mendizabal's cross-examination was weak. He tried to argue that Valeria had intended to keep the winnings separate, but intent doesn't matter when you've already mixed the money. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. Hernandez questioned Mendizabal's legal strategy, reading directly from his own court filings. Mr. Mendizabal, in your preliminary motion dated November 18, 2024, you stated, and I quote, the lottery ticket in question was purchased during the marriage with funds from the marital estate. Do you remember writing that? Mendizabal's face went white. That was a misstatement. A misstatement that you signed and filed with this court under penalty of perjury, yes? Judge Ochoa leaned forward. Mr. Mendizabal, are you telling this court that you filed false documents? No, Your Honor, I misspoke in the document. I meant to say. Hernandez interrupted. Your Honor, Mr. Mendizabal's own filings support our position. He has acknowledged that community funds were used to purchase the winning ticket. The Villarreal family looked sick. Don Carlos was sweating through his expensive shirt. Dona Patricia kept shaking her head in disbelief. Valeria took the stand to testify on her own behalf. Mendizabal had prepped her, but she was clearly flustered. Mrs. Salazar, Hernandez began his cross-examination. You have testified that you always intended to keep any lottery winnings as separate property. Is that correct? Yes. Then why did you deposit the entire 237,600,000 pesos into your personal BBVA checking account that you have been using to pay marital expenses? Valeria stammered. I needed a place to put it. You have a separate account at Banorte, correct? An account your husband has never accessed. Yes, but an account with over 1,200,000 pesos in it, correct? Yes. So you had a place to keep the money separate, but you chose not to. Instead, You mixed it with community funds and began spending it freely. Correct? Valeria looked at Mendizabal desperately, but he couldn't help her. I guess so. Hernandez pulled out her BMW purchase agreement from BMW Vallarta. You bought this car on November 15th, 2024, 5 days after depositing the lottery winnings. Correct? Yes. For 1,900,000 pesos. Yes. Using lottery money. Yes. Did you consult with your husband about this major purchase? We were separated. Ma'am, you didn't file for divorce until November 20th, 2024. You were still legally married when you bought this car. So I'll ask you again, did you discuss this purchase with your husband? No. Judge Ochoa ordered a lunch recess at 12:30 p.m. In the hallway, Don Carlos Villarreal approached me one last time. Roberto, this is insane. We will appeal any decision she makes. This could drag on for years. That's your choice, Don Carlos. But I have time and a good lawyer. The afternoon session was brief. Judge Ochoa had made her decision. I have reviewed all the evidence and the applicable law. She began at 2:15 p.m. The prenuptial agreement signed in December 2017 is clear and unequivocal. Section 4.2 explicitly states that any prize or winning acquired during the marriage is community property. Article 183 of the Federal Civil Code supports this interpretation. Furthermore, the defendant's actions in commingling the lottery winnings with marital assets demonstrates her own acknowledgement that these funds were not separate property. Valeria started to cry. Her mother took her hand. Therefore, I'm awarding Mr. Salazar 50% of the net lottery winnings for a total of 118,800,000. Mrs. Salazar, you have 60 days to liquidate assets if necessary to meet this obligation. The gavel fell with a satisfying thud at 2:22 p.m. outside the courthouse. Reporters shouted questions. I ignored them all, except one from Canal 44. Mr. Salazar, how does it feel to win? I thought about it for a moment. Justice always feels good. 2 months later, in June 2025, I used part of my settlement to buy a small construction company from a retiring contractor. I also fully paid off the loan from my afore. I didn't want to owe anyone anything. Today, Constructora Salazar employs 38 people and specializes in affordable housing throughout the Guadalajara metropolitan area. Valeria had to sell her BMW, return the down payment on her apartment in Zapopan, and liquidate most of her designer purchases to pay me. The last I heard, she was working at her father's real estate firm in Tlajumulco, earning 650,000 pesos a year. The local newspapers followed the story for weeks after the ruling. Some called me vengeful. Others saw me as a symbol of working-class justice. I didn't care about either. I just wanted what was fair. The Villarreal family never spoke to me again, which was fine by me. They had shown their true colors when they thought they could throw me away like trash. Sometimes the best revenge is no revenge at all. Sometimes it's just letting people face the consequences of their own greed and stupidity. They created the weapon that destroyed them. I just had the dignity to use it.